welcome to the Well Child Show. Hello there, my name is Kemak Onyenucheya, and I welcome you to the maiden edition of the Well Child Show with Kemak. Childhood is the foundation of every individual's life. Consequently, this makes it the most delicate phase of life. Unlike the foundation of any physical building, a compromise of any sort at this stage of life would result in myriad problems in adulthood. The need to preserve the sanctity and integrity of childhood is the vision behind the Well Child Show with Kemak. On the Well Child Show, we will be bringing you snippets and educating information on what it means to birth, groom, and raise a well child. We will also bring you parenting tips that will help you improve communication with your children, leading to less frustration in the parent-child relationship in the 21st century. Today on the show, I will be looking at the topic child abuse, and will be delineating the different aspects of child abuse and how you as a parent or a guardian can work with your children to ensure their safety and to ensure that they are not brought under the influence of sexual predators and other forms of child abusers. We'll go on a quick break. When I return, I will delve into the topic of discussion. Thank you for being a part of the show. Don't go away, I'll be right back. Hello and welcome to the Well Child Show. Welcome back. Today on the show we're looking at child abuse, and I'm going to be sharing with you relevant information on what child abuse actually means and how this impacts the lives of children, and I'll be looking at it from the standpoint of a psychologist and the definite effects that child abuse has on children. Essentially, I like to define abuse as a combination of two words, AB standing for abnormal and use standing for use. So I like to see the word child abuse as the abnormal use of a child. Now, people may ask, how exactly do you use children? And what does it actually mean when you talk about the use of a child? Essentially, the essence of having children in families, in the community, across generations, is to bring joy, to bring fun. Children bring laughter to homes and to the nation. Children are the certainty and the assurance that we have that the human race will continue and not go extinct. Children are a source of strength in old age. As parents advance in years, there are certain responsibilities and certain duties around the home and even in the community that these parents who begin to lose strength as they approach their golden years may not be able to carry out. And therein comes the beauty of having children, because all these things that you can no longer do as you advance in years, your children come into the picture and they help you do all those things. So children are a source of strength. Children are also a source of pride. What exactly do I mean? As individuals who get married or have children, as your children grow, there's a sense of fulfillment and pride that comes with having your child by your side. And when people look at you and see your children and see them grow and see them strong and healthy, there's a sense of pride and joy that comes with that. Now, I usually like to give an analysis when I'm talking about the use of a child. Every home, or let's say, most homes have a chair to be sat on. The essence of the chair is for you to sit on the chair. You can actually sleep on the chair, but when you sleep on the chair and you wake up, you will feel pains all over your body. In essence, you have made use of the chair, but you haven't made use of the chair appropriately. and we can say the chair has been used abnormally. I'm just trying to draw a lot of inference so that everyone is on the same page as to what we mean by child abuse. In the same way, all of these things I have outlined, talking about the use of children and the beauty and the color and the honor that children bring to life, any use or any engagement of children outside these things I have mentioned is what we can refer to as child abuse. Essentially, we have about 5 different types of child abuse. And the first one is the verbal abuse. What exactly is verbal abuse? The use of harsh, mean, insulting, and underserving words in communicating with children. It is of great essence that parents and caregivers understand the impact that their words have on children. Why do we say this? Children depend on the parents and the adults in their lives to bring them up and to show them the right way to go. Now, the primary means through which we communicate training and upbringing to children is through our words. So when we use words that are demeaning, words that are insulting, words that attack the very individuality of the child, words that have the potential to cause emotional harm and damage to children, we are said to engage in physical abuse. For instance, referring to a child as an animal, that's an example of a physical abuse of the child. Or referring to a child by a negative connotation of character, that is physical abuse of the child. Anytime you use words that portray a child in a negative light, you have engaged in physical abuse. In verbal abuse. And closely linked to verbal abuse is the next kind of abuse that we have, which we call the emotional or psychological abuse. Why do I say that the verbal abuse and emotional abuse are closely linked? Words, like I said earlier, are the vehicle of communicating with individuals. By your words, you share your innermost thoughts, you convey your messages, you convey instruction, and you express yourself. Now it's observed by research. When you express consistently negative words to children, what happens in essence is this. You're building a mental picture in that child that, apart from making the child feel less of who they are, apart from making the child feel like they don't measure up to acceptable standards of societal engagement, you're selling a negative self-image and a negative picture to that child. And this is what, accounts for lots of children growing up with low self-esteem, children who don't believe in themselves, children who have a negative, impression and image of themselves that results in destructive behavior. Research has also shown that many a times individuals that we refer to as societal miscreants are actually victims of verbal abuse that resulted in emotional misconstruct in these individuals. And as they grew up, the negative mental images and pictures that they had of themselves, based on the constant, reinforcement of negative words that were spoken to them, shows up as destructive behavior that is harmful to both self and to others and the environment. It's really crucial that as parents and as guardians, as teachers, as medical professionals, as adults, and anyone who generally works with children, either in a religious or secular sector, it's very important that we watch the words that we say to children. It's very important that our words are constructed in such a way that reinforces the positive aspects of the child's life and helps them to understand the value, the worth, and the potential that they bring to the table as individuals worthy of respect. I know in this part of the world, in our climate, it seems a little bit off the handle when we talk about respecting children and the rights of a child to be respected by an adult. The truth is this: granted that children are supposed to respect and revere the adults in their lives, parents, guardians, teachers, and society, but don't forget, the children are a product of our society. The examples that we set and we lay aside for children is what they will cultivate and grow in. And in essence, for every time you see a child who is acting in ways that are not socially acceptable or ways that are essentially disappointing to expected norms in society, the question should be asked: in what environment is that child growing? How are the adults in the life of the child treating the child? What words are being spoken to these children? I remember a case of a young girl who said she got into prostitution as a teenager. And, after a series of rehabilitations and interventions, she was asked, "This thing you're doing, do you feel it's the best choice for you?" And she said no. And she was asked further, "Why did you go into prostitution as, an alternative to living a positively engaging and societally enriching life?" And she mentioned that as a child, she had a class teacher who consistently reinforced negativity to her because she probably had, challenges in her work at school. The teacher consistently told her, "You will not be good for anything except to lay on your back." Now, those words were consistently spoken to this young child, and it set a mental picture in motion that made her see herself in the light of the words that were spoken. This is how far the wrong words spoken to children can go. This is how far, this is the extent to which negative words spoken to children consistently can destroy the very moral fabric of the individual's life. I'm going to go on a quick break right now. When I come back, I will intimate you on the other types of abuse that we have that children can be made to go through by the adults in their lives. Don't go away. The Well Child Show with Kemak will be right back. Welcome back. You're still watching the Well Child Show with Kemak. As I stated earlier, the vision that drives the Well Child Show is a healthy and safe world, devoid of sickness and abuse, where every child can grow and flourish to their fullest potential. This is the maiden edition, and I'm glad you're here to share it with us. I was speaking about the different aspects of child abuse before I went on the break, and right now I mentioned that we have the verbal abuse, which is the use of hard words on children, and I also mentioned emotional abuse, which could be a result of consistent use of negative and hard words on children. Now we move over to the next type of child abuse, and we're talking about the sexual abuse. What exactly is child sexual abuse? Engaging a child in any form of sexual activity amounts to sexual abuse. Now, for a lot of people, there's a limited knowledge that sexual abuse means, the physical engagement of sexual activity using the genitals of an adult and the child. But the very term and the very definition of sexual abuse actually goes beyond just, the physical engagement or the physical, interaction of genitals of an adult and a child. As a matter of fact, any exposure to a child to a content of a sexual nature amounts to child sexual abuse. In essence, exposing your children to pornographic movies or pornographic materials amounts to child sexual abuse. Now, a lot of times people ask, we know there's a general understanding and a general agreement that children should not be engaged in sexual activity. While this is accepted across board, a lot of people would like to know, why exactly is it wrong for children to be involved in sexual activity? Now, human beings come to this world as young, as babies, as offspring. And while the different parts of the human body are complete in, physiologically complete children, the truth is this: several aspects of those human body parts, and not just the human body parts, but the ethereal parts of the human being, which actually are involved in sexual activity, are not yet mature in children. For example, to engage in sexual activity, it involves not just the physical body of the individual. The creativity of the individual is involved. The mindset of the individual is involved. Physical strength is involved, and several other aspects of the human being. In children, most of these parts are not fully mature, and this makes it wrong on every level to engage children in sexual abuse. Now, sexual abuse is arguably one of the most debilitating experiences that any child could go through. It comes with myriad, so many horrible consequences, amongst which are, low self-esteem, suicidal thoughts, apart from, the physical injuries that the children could go through, exposure of children to all sorts of diseases, sexually transmitted infections, HIV and AIDS, and so much more. For these and so many more reasons, it is highly frowned upon to engage an underage child in sexual activity of any form. And speaking about child sexual abuse, it's also important that parents understand that every child, regardless of socioeconomic or whatever kind of demographic, is at risk of child sexual abuse. And this is the reason why we advocate and try to, encourage and advise parents to be extremely watchful about their children. Be extremely careful with your children. Don't leave your children unsupervised. Don't leave your children, in the company or the care of adults or older children that you don't know and you are not comfortable with. Now, there are so many staggering statistics about child sexual abuse. I'm going to run through a few, and I'm sure some of the information that I'm going to give will pop up on your screen. Statistics have shown that 1 in 4 girls is at risk of being sexually abused before the age of 18, and 1 in 6 boys will undergo child sexual abuse before the age of 18. These are staggering statistics. More staggering still is the idea that 80 to 90% of sexually abused children know and have a form of relationship with their abusers. What does this tell us, parents? We need to be on the lookout for our children. There are certain steps that one can take to guard against our children being exposed to sexual abuse. Number one, and this is what we advocate that parents do, from the age of 2, you must begin to teach your children the different parts of their bodies and highlight the difference between the private and the public body parts. And in doing that, you should also help your children to understand the different types of acceptable social touch. I'm going to run you through very quickly on the private parts in the child bodies. The mouth is the first private part in the body of your children. The next one is the chest region, and this includes the breasts and the nipples, and this is for both boys and girls. Thirdly, we have the upper arm, which is from the shoulder to the elbow. That's a private body part. And the next private body part we have is the lower back and the belly. And then we move on to the thighs, which is from the waist to the knee. And we have the genitals, the penis for the boys, and the vagina for the girls. And finally, we have the buttocks. You must teach your children from the age of 2 that these parts are private and that no one should have unfettered, uncontrolled access to those parts of their bodies. Now, a lot of times parents like to ask the question, why should we teach our children these things at the age of 2? And I tell them this. From the age of 2, every individual begins to assert their individuality. The age of 2 is an age of consciousness of individuality in the child. And at that age, children are able to identify the different parts of their bodies. And so you must ride the storm. You must take advantage of that natural propensity that comes with being a child, that comes with growing up at that age, and teach your children the difference between their private and their public body parts. You must not take this for granted, because the child is the first police of their body. Unfortunately, you may love your child so much, but you will not be with your child 100% of the time. And you need to teach your child to protect themselves primarily and immediately should they come in contact with a sexual predator. And people also always ask, like, if we do this, if we start talking to children about their private parts, are we not introducing them to things they may not know, or ideas that could bring about negativity in the life of the child? I always say this: what are the odds that your child is able to protect themselves and your child is unable to protect themselves? These are the issues. Now, there's so much that we can deal with in covering this issue of child abuse, but sadly we have run out of time. But I assure you, next week I will be back and we will continue the discussion on how to protect our children from the different kinds of child abuse. But this discussion is not over. You can, connect with us on our social media platforms. On Instagram, that is @TheWellChildShow. And we have another Instagram page @GlobalChildHealth. All of this information is displayed on your screen. You can hook us up on Facebook, on YouTube, and send us an email for speaking engagements and training opportunities. You can send an email to info.wellchildshow@gmail.com. Thank you so much for being a part of the show today. I will be back same time, same station next week. And always remember, child health and safety is everybody's business. Be good and take care of yourselves.